Okay, this is the show busy part. Hey, everybody. Oh, wait. No. Come on down here. Come down here. Because I got somebody doing the show with me. Actually, I got somebody doing the show for me. Melissa, introduce yourself to the people in the audience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa McKnight Rouse. I am the second vice chair for the York County Democratic Party, and I'm happy to be here this evening.
And we are going to be talking about student debt relief. And you got a whole panel of people to talk to. And I have finally found someone to take over the show. So I'm going to disappear. I'm going to go behind the scenes and just push buttons, hopefully correctly, and let you take over. And call me if you need me. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much.
For everybody out there in YouTube land and podcast land, this, let me see. Do I remember how I do this? Yes. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Fort Mill, South Carolina, in the shadow of Charlotte, the buckle of the Bible Belt, and the foot of Mount Belzoni. And where are you?
I am right here in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Do you want to make anything else up?
Well, it's a fun part of York County. I'm actually originally from that big metropolis of Sharon, South Carolina. So I'm a Rock Hillian implant, but I'm happy to be here. I have met plenty of people, plenty of friends, good people here, great food, great entertainment, and it's a great place to live. Outstanding.
And this is the York County Democratic Party YouTube show and podcast. We call it
YCDP TV. So I'd like to interview two special guests that I have here today with me. Two have been on the show before, but they're here for my support, for the support of the York County Democratic Party. We have Nikita Jackson, who is the York County Democratic Chair. And we also have Amber Bowen. She is the York County Democratic Third Vice Chair. Nikita, do you have any words for us today?
I just want to say thank you to the attendees today, Mrs. Moore and Mrs. Long. Thank y'all for taking time out of your day to be a part of the YCDP TV. We greatly appreciate you coming on here just to talk about things that have been going on in your lives. And we greatly appreciate you guys just being a part of the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. Amber, do you have any words for us this evening?
I just want to say I'm excited to be able to sit down with other York County community members and really hear about how legislation has really been working for you. This is a very important year as we are going into election year, and understanding how higher level legislation trickles down to us, the common people, I think is very important for others to hear. So thank you for coming on and sharing your stories.
Thank you so much, Amber. So our panelists today, as Gary has told you, we have two people from our community. First, we have Kizmet Moore. She is a mother of two, college graduate, and she's currently employed. She is a DEI director at her organization. And also we have Mary Long. She is a mother of two, and a grandmother and a retiree. So thank you, ladies, for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get right into it. So we'll start with Kizmet, and I'll bounce back and forth between the two of you so you can kind of tell your own story about loan forgiveness. So the first question that I have for Kizmet, can you describe your educational experience and what brought you to the point of applying for a student loan? Can you kind of just walk us to what brought you to that point?
Sure. My undergraduate is at Winthrop University. I also have a Master's of Business Administration from Webster University as well. So starting out at Winthrop, my mother is a school teacher, 71 years old, still teaching school today. And at the time, starting out in school, we got here. I'll never forget, we got here. We thought things, were taken care of, and then realized we still had a balance. And how did we do that? Because at the time, we weren't thinking about student loans, to be honest with you. We were trying to make payments and do all of those types of things. But as we know, life happens. And I had two siblings coming behind me. And so at the time, for me, being the oldest, I didn't want to put my mother in a bind with having two children still at home that were, school age. So I said, let's just get a student loan to pay it off. And then you don't have to worry about making payments and additional payments. So that's how we kind of started the student loan process. Was my freshman year, taking care of the balance that was left. My mother was trying to do it without student loans, but it was too much of a burden on her at the time, being a school teacher. She luckily she didn't have any, going into that. But that's how we got started. Was that I just didn't want to put that burden on her with having 2 other children at home to take care of. So I said, this is what we'll do, and I'll handle it once I get out.
Right. That's very commendable of you. So, Mary, can you kind of walk us through your story? I know everyone has a different story. What was your story like?
Well, hi to everyone. My story life was I'm a high school graduate of Jefferson High in York, South Carolina. And during my life, an education thing, I never even considered going to college myself. So, but after I had 2 children, and as they grew, things change. You want them to get an education, you want them to be able to do and get good jobs and everything. So therefore, my daughter, she's the oldest, she graduated in 1992, and she went to King's College in Charlotte. My son graduated from high school in 1995. He went to Newberry College in Newberry, South Carolina. So I guess you could say that my journey with the student loan started in 1992-3 when Tracy entered school. And really not knowing the process of getting kids into college, I guess it caused me to take on more debt than I should have taken on. And but I was determined to get them in school. So therefore, I didn't know a lot about grants and that kind of process, that could have helped me with their education. All I know is that working in the industry, I was, like Cannon Mills and Randolph Yarns and Liner Health Products, Hello Lighting, all the places that I worked, they closed down, because of jobs being moved to China and Mexico and, and all of that. So therefore, I was trying to send them to school, but most of the time it was on unemployment, and unemployment, that's not going to be, that's really is not enough for you to live, from day to day life, So therefore, not being able to take care of family and student loans, get them in school, I kept, adding debt, trying to pay for college and all of that. That's just life. That's the way life was. Yeah.
Right.
And from that, I just got overwhelmed with student loan debt.
Right.
So
did you know how to apply for the loans, or did someone walk you through that process when you were applying for the loans?
No, actually, I just went online, and I heard about the FAFSA, and all those different things like that, from my children was telling me from school, what they knew. And so I just went from there, not knowing the basics, not knowing the kind of overwhelming debt that I was getting in.
Right.
And so from there, that's just what happened. The debt piled on, the everyday living expenses, they keep going, and all of that. And like I said, with the industries in the state, everything was closing down. And with me just being a high school graduate, my education was limited. So therefore, my opportunities was also limited, and then you get in older, So you just do what you had to do. I was trying to get my kids in school, and that's what I did.
And what you did, right?
That's what I did. My husband and I, that's what we did. Yeah.
And what about you, Kizmet? Did you understand the loan process when you were applying for it? Who walked you through the process, or did you kind of do that on your own?
No, I actually went through the financial aid office. So I made the decision to go ahead and get a loan. I went through the financial aid office at Winthrop. I had a financial aid counselor that actually walked me through the process, told me exactly on everything. I mean, they were very transparent with, how much it was, when it would have to pay back. They also explained to me what the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized. So even as a college student, I understood it, but I don't think it hits you until you walk out the door with that degree. I think what I'm saying? I think I was smart enough to understand that I had a loan. I was smart enough to understand that it was going to gain interest. I was smart enough to understand that, like, okay, I know 6 months, that make sure they tell you that part. 6 months after you graduate, that payment is going to kick in. They make sure they tell you that. So that was what
is true.
On my mind when I graduated. I was like, okay, I gotta get a job because this payment is coming, and working in retail is not gonna do it. So really that's where it came from. It's like I understood it, but I don't think anybody really feels the impact to either one, you go out and you see that first payment come in and that's your responsibility. Or if you're not making as much as you thought you were going to make graduating, when you go through that process of trying to find that job and you can't make that payment. And now you're in a mindset of, okay, how is this going to affect my credit? How, all the things you're growing up now, like it's real. It's real, now.
Right.
It's like, oh, I got a loan. I got a little refund, I can go do a little something and, but you really don't feel it until it is your responsibility and you're trying to figure out, how do I navigate this thing? Because now I'm a grown up and I'm trying to figure out, how do I do these things? How do I keep my credit straight? How do, what's deferment? What's forbearance? Now that they didn't explain.
Okay.
Deferment and the forbearance part. They didn't explain to you that. It was just kind of, here it is. This is how much you can get. Why
don't you take a few seconds to explain that to us?
So the forbearance and the deferment part, that's the part they didn't really explain. That, once you come out of school, if you're still taking classes, you could get a deferment. So it could be deferred. The payment is deferred for a certain amount of time. If you're still taking classes and things like that. Say I was going for my master's.
Right.
But forbearance is when you're having a hardship. You cannot make that payment. And so they will offer that forbearance piece. So then the payment stopped, the interest continues, right? On both of those, right. The interest continues to compound, but you have a certain amount of time. Most of the time they would give you a year. Maybe about a year. And think about it. If you're 23 years old, you're like, sure, I'll take that 12 months. But you don't realize that it's continuing to compound.
Compound interest.
Interest is coming. And that's the piece they do not explain to you when you're getting your loan deferred, or if you're getting your loan, if it's in forbearance. Now, as you go on to ask your other questions, I'll share how that helped me.
Okay. So I guess I'll toss this one back to Mary. How much, or could I say, how much did you end up borrowing? Or maybe you don't have to speak directly to how much you were borrowing, but what percentage would you, just a rough estimate of your day-to-day or your monthly income would go to loans repayment?
Well, I would say I would give you an estimated amount of, I end up borrowing, and this is on the parent side, because like she was saying, 6 months for the students, but when you apply for a parent loan, you don't get those 6 months. Those payments start automatically coming. And between my son and my daughter, I'm just going to give an estimate of maybe like close to $30,000, debt combined, because I was making the payments, while I was working, and all that. But then when unemployment came, the payments got really hard. So therefore, like she was saying about the forbearance and all of that, I applied for those as often as I could. But I didn't know about all that interest, like she was saying, was going to keep building up. And you just find yourself it's just like you fall into a hole. It's a dark hole. You think you've done the best thing, but then after they start calling you,
Right.
and all that, that you find out you don't know whether you really did yourself any good or not. And
Right.
as far as the percentage of my income, as far as the payments, I would say you were looking at about at least 25% of my income when I was really working. And when I was unemployed, you could say it would take up at least half of my income. But like I say, it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how did you find out about the loan forgiveness plan?
I was contacted before then, before the loan forgiveness, from this company out of California called ABS. It was a better solution for student loans. And I was skeptical, when you call because you think you're getting scammed, and that kind of thing.
Right.
And he was telling me about these programs that they offered in order to help people who was like hardships, that really was really struggling trying to pay payments. Because he told me that in my income bracket that I was in, I shouldn't have been making that much payment. He said, you taking over half of your livelihood for the month trying to make these payments. And so I reluctantly got in with them after he called me, I say about 3 or 4 times, trying to convince me. And that program was a blessing because I got in that, they put me in that, and I was there for almost 8 years. And then hearing about this loan forgiveness after President Biden, they was talking about it, but I never thought, that would ever happen, so I really didn't have to do anything else after that. I was just covered through that ABS. It was a better solution program for student loans. And just kind of like, it was just like, it was just a blessing. It took a lot of the burden off on me. But I had to make a payment to them, but it was nowhere near what I was paying in the student loan.
Right.
And then last year, and I think it was around maybe the last of October, I got a letter in the mail, and I'm going like, when I saw that on the bottom, it said U.S. Department of Education, I said, oh my goodness, those loans are coming back again, And then when I opened it up, and it said, congratulations, that the Biden-Harris administration have forgiven my student loan. I'm telling you, I cannot explain to you the joy that I felt. It was wonderful.
That's great. That's great.
It was a blessing. Yeah, a truly blessing.
Now, what about you, Kizmet? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss. Go ahead,
okay.
Mary.
I'm finished. I was going to say, after all those years, it was just a stress coming off of you.
So you were paying those since 1993.
Yeah, 28 years. It's all told. That's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years.
Yeah. For 30,000 to start with 30,000, you're paying that for 28 years.
30,000. And I'm not embarrassed to tell you the amount that they paid off, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
After those years, my forgiveness letter said that they forgave $20,145.73.
So after 28 years, you paid down $10,000.
Yeah. On my end, yeah. I told you, it's just like being in a black hole. You just
because they kept compounding
money away, and the interest is just compiling. The more forgiveness, forbearance they give you, the worse it got.
Wow.
Well, that's my story.
That's amazing.
It is.
The numbers makes it very touching. Wow, makes it real.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you for sharing that.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, Kizmet, what about you? How did you find out about the loan forgiveness plan, and what was your process like?
I was following it. As soon as he said give it, I was following it. I was just happy for the initial 20,000. I was like, yes, Now I'll be honest, like Miss Long, mine was excessive. It really was excessive. I had started grad school at one time, and got a loan there. Then I stopped and then went back to grad school. So that was another loan to go to grad school. And then I was using the forbearances. I was using the deferments. I was doing it all. Okay. Because what I couldn't understand was if I come to you and say, this is the amount that I can pay because you asked, and then you send me a bill for double what you told you I couldn't pay, I just couldn't understand it. And I would argue with the people on the phone. I was like, okay, if I did all the things that you asked me to do and said, this is how much I can pay every month, why would you send me a bill for double what I said I could pay? Right. And so I did. I'm not ashamed to say it. I used my forbearances. I used my deferments. I got my master's degree, and mine was excessive. I wish I could say that I was with Ms. Long at $21,000. I will say this: my loan forgiveness came in last August. I did everything they said. So when the application, I kept following it on the news. I kept reading articles. I'm a researcher, so I was researching everything. I was always on the website trying to figure out what happened. And then, like I told you before, or like I shared, I'm the oldest. So when I see things, I'm passing it through the family, right? So when the application came out, I'm sending the link. I'm like, mama, sister, brother, nieces, nephews, like I'm getting it out, like do it now. I don't want you to know that later on, do it now. So I put in the application. I got the first notice in July of 2023 that said update your information. Family members called and they were like, should we do this? Some of them nobody had reached out to them, right? Because everybody's going through the changes. So I was like, no, update your information, do exactly what they say. Like, don't be afraid is what I was saying. Don't be afraid. So I completed the information in July, and in August, I was traveling for work, and my best friend called me, and she was like, "Girl, they forgiving student loans," and she was like, "You need to check." And I was like, "She was like, you need to check," and I was waiting it out. I'm just gonna. I've been waiting it out for years. Okay, I've been waiting it out for years, and so I checked it, and sure enough, when I logged in, it said 0, and I was like, okay, we ain't gonna believe this till the letter come. I was like, I need that in writing where I can print it and save it so they don't come back. But it's the truth, And so I found out like August the 12th. I logged into my account. It said all of my loans had been forgiven. I jumped for joy. I composed myself, like I said, until I got the official letter. And then when I got the official letter in the mail and I got the email that said that they were forgiven, I'm not going to lie, I shouted. I will tell you that my loans were over 100,000. 100,000 for me, for my undergraduate, for my graduate, interest. And I will tell you, most of it was interest. It wasn't a loan. It was the interest that had built. So no matter if I was in school and had it under deferment, no matter if I was going through a hardship because I have 2 children, so life was lifing, right? I work in corporate America, so I've been through layoffs before, so I had to deal with it that way. And I just tried to do all of the right things, with them to continue to let them know what was going on during that time. And that interest killed it. I mean, I was like, I'll never get out of this. I'll be paying for this till I die, And so when it was forgiven by President Biden, it was a blessing. It was a blessing to my family because I now have one in college, one going to college in August. Right. And so what we have done is we've worked really hard not to have them have student loans. So we have worked our butts off. We have sacrificed. And if we have had to take something, we only take what we need. We have taught them no refund checks, none of that. You know what I'm saying? If you need it, you take exactly what you need. And then what I've also done is already start paying small payments on the little bit that we've had to take. So when they finally get out, they won't have that loan on them as well. Or the oldest one, because the youngest one is just in college. But it was a blessing. I mean, it was an absolute blessing. I mean, I had resolved in my mind that I would have it forever because of how much it was. And it was just, I was going to have to deal with it. But I just did all of the things. I mean, I stayed on top of it. I kept doing all these different things. And I'm going to be transparent with this too, which some people won't. When I tried to figure out, even though my mother said, "Child, don't figure it out. Don't try to figure out how. just accept the blessing." The plus in it that some people may not realize that I think is very important to share is that the reason that mine was forgiven is because they went back and counted all that time that I was in deferment and forbearance, which is not what they were doing before. So the new changes that were put in place, the changes that, legislation had put in place on how they, what's the right word? How they reworked the system.
Correct.
To my benefit, because they actually counted that time. When they counted that time, that meant that my 20 years was done based on when I graduated. So, and that's what people don't understand either. They're like, how did that happen? How did you? And so I went back to research because I wanted to be able to share, which is, a blessing. You asked me to do this because nobody's ever asked me about loans except the friends who I'm like, girl, go do this, go do that, go do that. Really, when I went back to research to find out how did it really happen, it was because they went back and counted the time that my loans were in forbearance. They counted the time that my loans were in deferment. And that time added up because when the letter came, it actually said that they should have been paid off like a year before. The date was like a year before, but I know, they were trying to figure out how they were going to revamp the system. But really, that's what it was. It was because they went back and counted all that time. If they had not, I would still probably be paying.
You would still be paying back. And you touched on something that made me think when you said that your children, you're trying to make sure that they don't have that same experience. So each generation gets better and better. So a lot of us in the African-American community, first generation, trying to get that first generation or, through school. And in your mom's time, education was more affordable.
Yes.
What we're experiencing now is for first generation and second generation is a college that is for most families, a lot of families, is not affordable, particularly if you're living right above a livable wage. So I commend you for, you're making sure that second generation or your children do not have to have the same experience that you had.
And the other thing I do, just to add to that real quick, Melissa, is I made sure that when we went through the financial aid process, Dwayne was in the room. Yeah. Dwayne was in the room. He was in the room. I made him sit there and listen. So I didn't keep him. A lot of times old school is like, oh, that's grown folks' business. Let us do whatever. No, it's not grown folks' business because your name is on that loan. So I want you to understand the process. I want you to hear it. I want you to understand how I'm negotiating. I want you to understand how I'm telling them, no, we don't want all of that because we don't need it. Right. It's easy to get excited hearing your peers say, oh, I got $1,000 refund check. Yeah, that's what we thought back in the day, too. We didn't realize that $1,000 with interest could now be $5,000, So I made sure that he is in the room with the financial aid officer. He doesn't make any moves without me, but I want to make sure that he's in the room to understand what it is. So then he can, if I'm not there or I can't get on the phone, he can ask clarifying questions to understand before he signs anything or even about credit cards or whatever it is.
Right.
You need to understand it before you put your John Hancock on it.
Right. Education is key. Education is key.
That's
so
true.
I'm going to toss this question to Mary, and then I'll come back to you, Kizmet. So Mary, Ms. Long, if you had anything to say to President Biden about this whole program, what would that be?
Oh, my goodness. I would say, thank you. This is a wonderful program. It could be life-saving to a lot of people as far as their finances and everything. Because there are other things that education is important, but just living life daily, there's expenses, and what he did, it was just a wonderful thing. It really helped me, peace of mind. And I'm just glad that he came through on his promise. Because honestly, a lot of times, you go to these elections, and these people, they promise things, politicians promise they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And then over the years, you say, well, I voted for him, but I really didn't feel any effect of it. Now, here I am, a retiree, grandmother, and to actually say that I actually benefited and from something that a presidential candidate did.
Right.
It just seems like a miracle. I thank President Biden and Ms. Kamala Harris for their for what they did. And I just think that it was a wonderful thing. I'm just lost for words. I'm telling you, I'm just lost for words.
That was heartfelt. We felt that.
Yeah, very heartfelt. Very heartfelt. And I'll vote for him again.
Now, what about you, Kizmet? What would you tell President Biden?
Oh my goodness, I would tell him thank you. Thank you for a lot of things, not just for the forgiveness, but it helped me. I've been in the financial services industry for a very long time. I've been on the insurance side. So I've been in that part of it. But it made me just more aware, educated me on what I needed to do, to make sure that didn't happen to my sons as they embark and going to school and making sure they're financially sound. But I would just say thank you for the opportunity to be able to be at peace sending them to school, because how could I make that payment for me and make that payment for them? Because like you said, it's the amount of tuition now is so astronomical at some of these schools. And, you still have out-of-pocket costs. You can have grants, you can have South Carolina Lottery and tuition assistance, you can have all of those things, but you're still going to have some out-of-pocket costs. And it allowed me to be able to take care of that without getting a loan, unless it was needed, because you have so many other different things. Like Ms. Long said, you have your daily responsibilities, you have, household responsibilities. So if I would ever meet him, I would tell him, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to learn about it. Thank you for the opportunity to be a recipient of that forgiveness, of that blessing. I appreciate that he was true to what he said he was going to do. And he stuck it out. He stuck it out no matter, what objections came his way. He found a way to make it happen. And I appreciate that. And just to Ms. Long's point, again, to know that you directly have been affected by what not saying that everything else doesn't affect us in some way, but when you directly been affected, directly been affected, that's different. That hits different. And you don't want to, some of us get embarrassed about sharing that information. When you first asked for people, I was like, oh, do I want to tell somebody that had over $100,000? I really want to tell somebody, not the lady in the insurance industry. That was my first thought. But then, as I thought about it and the opportunity came back around, the reason I said yes was because I knew that meant I needed to share. And I needed to be honest and transparent about that, because it happens. It happens to us very easily. And, when you learn better and better, you do better. So that's what we're trying to do with our kids. But back then it was a means to an end.
Correct.
I wanted a degree, and I wanted an advanced degree, and I wasn't going to stop until I got it. So it was like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get a loan. Figure it out. But again, you don't realize until you're out of it. You don't realize till you graduate that it hits you. So I don't want to get off the point. I would just say thank you for allowing me to be a recipient of your work and what you've done and keeping true to your word. And it is life-changing. Like Ms. Long said, it is life-changing and it is life-saving for some people, but it definitely was life-changing for me.
Awesome. And I would like to thank both of you ladies for joining us today. You have shared your stories. A lot of people where I see on social media, they don't think that this is real. They don't think that people have truly been affected by the student loan forgiveness plan that President Biden has implemented. But I know personally, I knew people personally, I know both of you personally. So we wanted some people, local people from York County to share their stories, to say, this is why I am sticking it out. This is the benefit that I have experienced personally, and I can speak to it. I can stand right here and say that this is true, that this is the benefit, and by this benefit, it's going to help generations to come. So our goal in life, or I would say my goal in life, is not to leave it the way it was, but to make it better than what I found it. So by this plan, this is going to make the next generation better and better, because an educated populace is a better populace. So I'm going to leave that right there. If anyone else has any questions or for our panelists, I'll give you a second to say something. Amber, you have something to say?
I did, and not that it was a question, just wanted to say thank you again, ladies, for sharing your stories. They were very touching. And some of the things that you talked about made me think about a speech President Biden gave not too long ago, where he said, a promise made is a promise kept.
Absolutely.
And I think it is so important to have these conversations, especially around our community, because it is important to elect officials who have our best interest at heart. And again, because this is an election year, getting these stories out so that people can see, like, these officials are really putting in the work that they're saying that they're putting in, and we can benefit directly. Like, it's not something I got to watch my neighbor down the street benefit from. It's something that touches me and affects my household. So I just want to say thank you again, ladies, for sharing your stories. They were amazing stories. And I want to be like y'all someday and get my loan given.
Keep working.
Nikita, do you have anything?
I too want to say thank you, ladies, for sharing your story. It's great when you can put a face in an actual person with the things that's going on out here in the world. Because as you see, we have so much going on that to be able to say something positive came out of having President Biden as our president and having him to stick to his word and keep his promise. But today I was listening to the news and I see that over $1.2 billion of student loan debt has been forgiven. 153,000 people will receive those letters saying you no longer owe a debt. And to have a debt to be paid, that is a wonderful thing. You feel free on so many different levels in so many ways, just to have that freedom. And I know that you have a great sense of peace about both of you. Your house is peaceful because you don't have that gray cloud hanging over your head. And just to hear your stories, both of your stories brought chills to me. And I just want to say thank y'all for being vulnerable to share your story so that someone else can say, hey, I too can have this to happen to me. I can see the evidence of what the plan was. So thank you very much for being a part of this platform, and hope that you'll be able to come back and share some great testimonies with us as well.
And can I share
Amber.
one more thing?
Sure.
I want to share one more thing for anybody who watches this, who is scared to go through the process. Please go in, update your information, and sign up for that SAVE program, because we're talking about loan forgiveness today, but don't miss out on the point that if it hasn't been forgiven just yet, if you're in a certain bracket, you're at a zero payment. So I've had family members that haven't necessarily had it forgiven yet, but we've gone in and done what we were supposed to do, and their payment is zero right now. So, that's a blessing too. Even though it's not forgiven, if you go through the program that he put in place and you do that, then someone may have a zero payment right now. And so I have a couple family members that, based on their situation, they have a zero payment right now. So don't be scared to go in and update your information.
That's awesome information. Thank you for that.
So thank you to productive citizens of York County for sharing with us. We appreciate everything that you've done today. I know that this will go out to the masses and someone will be blessed by what you've said and shared. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you.
Melissa, you have a full-time job now doing the podcast.
Oh, no. Gary, didn't I tell you she would be great for this?
She is super. And Mary and Kizmet, you guys were awesome guests.
Yes, they were.
Very compelling stories. And I'm glad you came here to talk to us.
Yeah.
Nope.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We need to close the
Thanks for
show.
the opportunity.
So we'll close the show. Just pretty simple. Thank you all for watching. This has been the York County Democratic Party YCDP YouTube show and podcast. Everybody wave goodbye, and I will say over and out.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, y'all.